Howdy folks, welcome back to World of Tanks with the mighty Jingles. This video, it's all about the artillery. Yes, I know that's a Centurion Mark 7. It's not artillery, but all will become apparent. It's probably safe to say I'm fairly infamous for giving artillery a hard time. Although I don't think that's 100% true. I prefer to think of it as being infamous for giving scumbags a hard time. What's the difference, Jingles? Steady. Good question though, glad you asked. The difference is, somebody who isn't a scumbag won't suicide at the end of the game just because things aren't going their own way. And I've heard all the excuses that they use to try to justify their scumbag actions. Oh, but the game's lost anyway, and there's no point in trying to continue fighting, so I just want to get the game over as quickly as possible. Well, if that was the case, just press escape, return to garage. Your machine remains on the battlefield. The victorious enemy players still get the opportunity to get more kills and do more damage and gain more XP and credit. Or you could even just tell the enemy team where you are, drive out into the open, let them kill you. But no, you don't do that. Instead you suicide, because you're a scumbag. But it's important to make the distinction here, because not all artillery players are scumbags, in the same way that not all tank drivers are gentlemen. Take this WZ111 for example. The only reason so many artillery players suicide at the end of the game is because it is so easy for artillery players to suicide at the end of the game. If it was just as easy for tank drivers to do it when they were about to lose, you would see lots and lots more tank drivers doing it. Oh, those are bold words, Jingles. I hope you've got some evidence to back up your claims. Well, I do actually. Back in the bad old days, countless tankers would quit the game when it looked like they were about to die, just to deny people the kill. How did they do that? Well, pressing escape and returning to the garage in the middle of a game used to destroy your tank instantly. And there was so much bitching on the forums, and justifiably so, about this scumbag behaviour that the game mechanics were changed, so that when you press escape and return to the garage, your machine remains on the battlefield. And that WZ111 driver has just thrown a massive hissy fit because I'd outplayed him, and he suicided his tank. Because he was in a position where it was easy for him to do it. If it was still as easy for tank drivers to behave like scumbags as it currently is for artillery drivers, I guarantee you more tank drivers would be doing it. And the word scumbag wouldn't be associated merely with artillery players. The only reason artillery players get such a bad rep is because it is so easy for them to kill themselves. If tank drivers could do it, tank drivers would do it. Tank drivers are doing it. They just don't have the opportunity to do it as often as I'm sure a lot of them would like. Artillery does. And that's purely because of the way artillery is played, and the kind of guns that artillery have. If you're sitting at the back of the map, and you can see your team collapsing around you, you're miles away from where the action is, it's just very, very easy to drive off a cliff, or into a river, or turn your gun around, park next to a wall, blow yourself away with your own splash damage. If it was just as easy for a tank to do it, tanks would be doing it. Tanks used to do it. When they get the chance, tanks are doing it. But it is very important that we recognise not all artillery players are scum-sucking crybaby douchebags with no more right to live on God's clean earth than a virus. There are some very, very good artillery players out there, and this video is all about them. This is Helix V2 in his M40 M43. He's top tier artillery in a tier 8 match, and this is a real arty party here on Serene Coast. The enemy team has 4 artillery, his team has 5 artillery, and there is a platoon of 3 FB304s. There's Helix V2, there's also a Geschutzwagen Panther. Now this kind of matchmaking almost never happens anymore, but I have seen far, far worse than this back in the bad old days. In a video I did months ago, prior to the rebalancing of artillery, I posted a screenshot on this map where there were 12 artillery on each team. Yeah, you can imagine how much fun that was. That kind of matchmaking was just terrible, and it's no fun for the artillery players either, because there's nothing to shoot at. Nobody wants to move. Thankfully, it's been changed, and that sort of matchmaking just doesn't happen anymore. This is about the worst you're ever likely to see, with 4 or 5 artillery on each side. And I know that a lot of tank drivers, particularly tank drivers who have never played artillery themselves, like to claim that artillery is the equivalent of some sort of orbital guided laser cannon that never misses and can hit you anywhere, and I have been guilty of saying this myself in the past. But those days are long gone as well. Artillery these days is a lot less accurate than it used to be, and it takes much, much longer for an artillery driver to aim his shot. And so, unless the artillery driver gets really, really lucky, or you make it easy for him, your chances of having your day ruined by an artillery shell coming out of nowhere are substantially lower than they used to be. And I think it's also the case that a lot of the people left playing artillery these days after the various nerfs and rebalances are very, very good at playing artillery. And the reason I say that is, well, I used to play artillery. I made it as far as the GW Tiger, which is now tier 9. And I gave up playing artillery not because I wasn't good at it, but because I just got sick and tired of constantly being blamed for the failures of my team. I was actually pretty damn good at playing artillery. I had Unicum stats in my artillery, and I am by no means a Unicum player. It's just that back in the old days, playing artillery was so ridiculously easy. Any idiot could do it and do well. Those days are long gone too, and so the kind of players that have stuck with the artillery that they grinded all the way up back in the old days are the people who've been playing artillery for a really, really long time and have gotten very, very good at it. And while I have absolutely no evidence to back up this claim whatsoever, I'm guessing that they're also the same kind of players who fight to the bitter end, and they don't throw themselves into the nearest stretch of water just because things aren't going the way they want it to. And it wouldn't surprise me one bit, and it's likely to be extremely controversial of me to say this, but I would not at all be surprised to find that the kind of artillery players who do throw a massive temper tantrum when it looks like they're about to lose the game and immediately drive into the nearest open body of water are also the kind of tank drivers who don't have a clue how to drive in a way that prevents them from getting hit by artillery, are constantly complaining about artillery being overpowered, even though it quite patently isn't and hasn't been for a long time, and are only driving artillery because they think it's easy mode, purely and simply because they keep getting smashed by artillery when they're driving their tanks. And I do realise that by making these kind of claims, I've just given all of the haters ample ammunition to come after me in the comments section of this video. So, to all the keyboard warriors and internet hard men out there, come and have a go if you think you're hard enough. Meanwhile, Helix V2 has not been having a great game so far, because artillery is horribly inaccurate and does take forever to aim. He's only managed to do slightly less than 400 damage. This flank has just collapsed. The right flank isn't making any progress, and there are 2 Scout Panthers now making a run, almost completely unopposed, on his position. The friendly GW Panther's spotted the danger as well, and he's yelling, "Watch out, they're coming down the hill." There's one of them. Of course, the second he has to turn the gun, his accuracy goes all to hell. And he holds his fire. He's waiting to see if the rest of his team can clean that guy up, which gives him a chance against this one, and he's been spotted. And now things are about to get really, really interesting. There's still 4 enemy artillery in play. He's been spotted. He cannot sit here. If they have any sense, they will have seen the scout making their run, and they will, there it is, have pre-aimed. He was very lucky to not die there. He shotgunned the scout. Enemy artillery took off most of his health, killed his loader. He gets his loader back up. Meanwhile, the FV304, apparently sick and tired of waiting for the 12T to do his job, has just done a hero scout run and has spotted almost all of the enemy artillery. Now that move has taken the pressure off Helix and the GW Panther as the enemy artillery scramble to defend themselves, and they have defended themselves. They've taken out the 304, the 12T went around to try and take advantage of the distraction. He got nailed by the AT7. Unfortunately, that was their best chance at securing an early win. They've now also lost the AMX 5100. Despite the fact that they had lit up the entire enemy team, Tier 8 artillery just takes so long to load and aim after shotgunning that Scout Panther that the entire enemy team have now re-hidden themselves. But then the Stuart Emil, who's moving up, spots and puts a shot into the enemy Lerva. Of course, that's bad news for the Stuart Emil driver because that means he's spotted too. Meanwhile, the Jagdpanther 2 is moving up the western flank, hooking around the north, and he locates one of the two GW Panthers. But once again, it's the aiming time of this Tier 8 artillery that's going to bite him in the arse. Playing high tier artillery successfully really does require an ability to read the map in a way that a tank driver generally can get away without having. The aiming time of these guns means that you need to know where your next shot is going to be needed long before you actually pull the trigger. You've got to keep an eye on what the rest of your team are doing. Keep scanning the map, looking at where your team are moving up, identifying positions where your team are likely to uncover enemy tanks and be ready to give them fire support before they get there. And his patience is rewarded with an artillery kill. The Jagdpanther 2, meanwhile, is having a sort of good news, bad news situation. He has spotted the other GW Panther. Artillery has just fired at him and missed him, but the AT-7 is putting him in a really tough position. Now, the enemy GW Panther was only spotted because he fired. He re-stealthed, but he didn't move position, and so our GW Panther was able to put a speculative shot at his last known location and take him out. But then there's more bad news. The Lerva had spotted our T-29, and the enemy T-28 managed to kill the T-29 without revealing his position. And Helix's shot misses the AT-7. So the situation here is pretty bad. That Stuart Emil is pinned by artillery on one side and a Lerva and an unidentified T-28 on the other. The Jagdpanther 2 is engaged in a gunnery duel with the AT-7, while still trying to avoid artillery fire. So Helix now has to decide who the hell he is going to support. The AT-7 is in good cover. The Lerva, on the other hand, is going to have to come through this slot in the rocks where the Stuart Emil is waiting for him. And let's not forget there's a T-28 down there somewhere as well, and if these two guys are coordinating their approach, the Stuart Emil is only going to get to kill one of them at best. Here comes the Lerva. And the Stuart Emil's in a good position there, as long as it's just the Lerva coming after him. So Helix makes the decision to shift his fire and support the Jagdpanther 2. Right at the exact moment the Jagdpanther 2 kills the AT-7, and the Lerva and the T-28 make their move. Worst possible timing. The T-28's dead, the Lerva sees his chance, makes his move, should have died there, gets the kill. And because Helix dithered over which target he was going to shoot at, he no longer had the accuracy to hit the Lerva. Now, things are pretty bad, but they could be worse. The Jagdpanther 2 has pushed up into the enemy base. Enemy artillery is likely to be running for their lives. Unfortunately, yep, he spotted one of them. They found the M44, but the M12 is still unlocated. Now this is a real good news, bad news situation for everybody involved. Helix is spotted, but he also knows exactly where the Lerva is. The Lerva is all too aware that Helix is not the only artillery on his team, so he has to keep moving. Neither of them want to be the one to go up over this railway embankment first because they're a one-shot kill for the other. Meanwhile, Helix cannot stop moving because the enemy M12 is also unlocated, and Helix is likely to be the only person on his team who is currently being spotted. And that's going to make him public enemy number one for enemy artillery, so he has to keep moving, while at the same time staying close enough to this Lerva to allow somebody else to kill him, and hope that somebody else can kill him before enemy artillery ranges on him. And there it is, Jagdpanther 2 saves his ass. And now he drives forward. He's driving over the embankment to try to get into the shadow of that hill, and there he is. There's the enemy M12. That was tense. Come on, yep, Jagdpanther 2 nails him. So that was the first artillery replay I've shown on the channel in a long time, and I really should do more of them, because if nothing else, hopefully this illustrates that artillery have their own problems as well. They are in no way, shape or form the orbital laser cannons that everybody seems to think they are. They take forever to aim, they're hopelessly inaccurate. And you never know, maybe by showing some more artillery replays it'll help give you tank drivers out there a better understanding of the limitations of artillery and make you better able to exploit their weaknesses and keep yourself safe from them. Meanwhile, here's Squirtle O in his GW Panther on the patch 8.11 version of the highway map. He is the only artillery on his team, and if things go true to form, that means he's going to be the one to take all the blame from his team when things start going wrong. And believe me, things are going to go wrong real fast for this team. I'd be tempted to claim that the majority of this team were utter dogshit, but if I did, I'm sure I would be receiving letters of complaint from dogshit who were outraged by the comparison. Most of the team's heavy tanks still haven't left the cap circle, and then when enemy fast tanks appear on the northern flank, all they do is dig in even further. They don't move north to support what few tanks have actually moved up there. No, they're going to wait for them all to die and still sit in the cap circle waiting to get overrun. That's how good they are. Because these geniuses seem to be physically tethered to the cap circle, there aren't enough tanks that have headed east into the town to be able to carry the fight there either. We've got a 361H up to the north who is digging in and desperately yelling for help. But of course, nobody's going to help him, so he's doomed too. You find yourself in this sort of situation, and it doesn't have to be in artillery, it can be in any tank, where you're 3 tanks down, you're about to be a lot more than 3 tanks down, and a third of your team are still running around the cap circle looking for windows to lick. You know there is going to be a mountain to climb ahead of you. Now if you're in a high DPM medium tank, for example, the situation isn't necessarily desperate. I mean, these guys in the cap circle are not completely useless. You can exploit their ineptitude by using them as meat shields. Stay behind them, let them spot targets for you, let them take hits for you, and use the DPM of your gun to do as much damage to the enemy team as possible while you can. Unfortunately, Squirtle's in artillery. And none of these geniuses even have the common sense to move up to positions where they can actually see the enemy coming before they get overrun. So, as far as Squirtle's concerned, it's kind of like that scene in We Were Soldiers where Sergeant Major Plumley walks into the regimental dressing station and advises all the wounded medics, "Gentlemen, stand by to defend yourselves." Now, Squirtle is concentrating on remaining hidden and giving some fire support, and that was a direct hit on the Tiger P. And he's given fire support to the guys in the town. You know, the guys who have actually shown that they know what they're doing and actually have a chance of making a difference. Now, the KV-1 who was in the cap circle earlier has moved north to try to intercept the guys that are heading south. I am convinced that the 3001H is just one of the cheaper bot programs out there. He has not moved the entire game. His turret literally just keeps turning around and shooting at anything that pops up in his view range. The KV-3 is not a bot, he's just terrible. The KV-1's gone up there and he is going to die alone, but he is also going to slow down the advance of the enemy tanks coming down from the north, which gives Squirtle more time to attempt to support these guys here in the town. Now, he does not have a very good shot at that Tiger P, but the Tiger P is on 389 health and is a potential one shot for the SU-100. They've just lost the KV-1. So instead he switches his fire because he can one-shot kill the Jagdpanther. He just needs to hit him. Unfortunately, while his shot was in the air, the Jagdpanther moved and he missed. They've lost the SU-100. The T-29 has just nailed a Nashorn. The T-29 is a one-shot kill. The T-29's best chance is to blow the tracks off that Jagdpanther and then get into cover from the Tiger P. It looks like he did blow the Jagdpanther's tracks off, but he's used a repair kit. Squirtle fires. Tiger P kills the T-29. Squirtle's shot arrives too late for the T-29, but he does kill the Jagdpanther, which is fantastic news for the Churchill, who's still alive in the town, because now, there it is. All he had to deal with was an 18 health Tiger P from the rear. Unfortunately, he's in a Churchill. It's not the fastest tank in the game, and he's the last competent player left alive on Squirtle's team. Now, despite the fact that you will often hear me saying that guy was no use to our team alive, even the worst player, unless he's actively griefing or team killing, can actually be useful to your team. For one thing, they give the enemy team something else to shoot at. Secondly, even an AFK tank can be spotting enemy tanks for you. The cheating bot in the 3001H wasn't completely useless. In fact, he's done better than most of Squirtle's team. Yeah, that's pretty sad. Even this window licker in the KV3 isn't completely useless, because the enemy team know where he is. They don't know where Squirtle is. And he is in a KV3, he's got a lot of health and a lot of armour, so it's going to take them time to kill him. Time that Squirtle can use to reload, aim, and put this gun to use. This is going to be one hell of a tricky shot. If he misses and hits the KV3, direct hit on the flat panzer. Very unlucky that it didn't kill him, and did very, very minor splash damage to the KV3, which means they're still going to be occupied finishing the KV3 off. And Squirtle is using the length of time it took them to do that to reload the gun, reposition himself, make sure there's as much concealment between him and that E25 and that Jagdpanther as he possibly can. And he's going to have to do this all himself, because that KV1, remember the KV1 who finished off the Tiger P in the town? He's only just started moving again. He's covered about 200 metres in the last 3 minutes. Squirtle's getting no help from him. But the situation is not desperate, despite the fact that they're being capped by the E25. Squirtle has continued to exploit terrain and concealment to the utmost. That E25 has absolutely no idea where he is. More importantly, enemy artillery, who probably has a rough idea where he is, does not know exactly where he is, which is why, after he finishes off the E25, he gets the hell out of there. Artillery killed the 3001H. Artillery is very, very likely to be watching. But even if artillery was pre-aimed on his position and saw the tracer of his shot, as long as he moves immediately after he fired, the length of time it's going to take the enemy shell to arrive, he can stay safe and avoid counter-battery fire. Although it is possible that the enemy artillery has more important matters on his mind, because the Churchill, who was in the town, has finally made it up to the enemy cap circle. Now, as soon as that Churchill starts capping, he's effectively announcing to the enemy team exactly where he is, and he's just spotted enemy artillery. Now, I can't see the Churchill's health from here, but what's likely to have happened is that the Churchill entered the cap circle, artillery fired, gave his position away, didn't kill the Churchill, and the Churchill started working him over. And right now you're going to see another reason why people don't like artillery very much. Kill secured. Yep, that's right. The tanks do the driving, the tanks do the spotting, the tanks take the hits, and the artillery takes the kills. However, let's not get too carried away, because, yep, there it is. The artillery was not the last member of the enemy team still around. They still have a Sturre Emil. So, things just got very, very interesting again. Now, that Sturre Emil's last known position was in the middle of that field up to the north. And the chances are that if he managed to fire and kill the Churchill, he probably moved up into the tree line just up ahead. So Squirtle is using this embankment. Oh, no, he hasn't spotted him. But he's using this embankment to mask his approach. And this is really, really dangerous, because this is likely to be exactly where that Sturre Emil is. Now, I obviously know how this is going to end. And with the benefit of hindsight, what I think is about to happen is this. First of all, Squirtle takes a shot and misses. I'm pretty sure that Sturre Emil has loaded high explosive ammunition to be sure of a one-shot kill, because he knows he's going up against artillery. Now remember, as of a couple of patches ago, you can fire through soft cover. But you have to have armor-piercing ammo loaded in order to do it. Yep, doesn't work with high explosive, does it, Mr. Sturre Emil? Shotgun, booyah! Yeah, that was a pretty good win. So to Squirtle, Helix V2, and all of those other artillery players who are not crybaby scumbags who suicide the instant the game is not going the way they would like it to, this video is for you. And to all those of you who are not artillery players, but like me, are constantly getting your game ruined by good artillery players like Squirtle and Helix V2, pay attention to what you've just seen. It might come in handy one day. As always, folks, take care on that battlefield, and I'll catch you next time.